Before the U.S. starts building the wall, it's rebuilding a section in San Diego. Why some people are sad to see the old version go.
It really just freaks them out, and a lot of times their reaction is to want to run away and try to find a safe place to hide.
Fireworks may be fun for some people, but not so fun for dogs and cats. What you can do to keep your pets safe this 4th of July.
And we're out here in Ocean Beach. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now.
Good evening. Happy 4th of July. I'm Susan Murphy. The border wall replacement project is underway in San Diego, and construction crews are tearing down a stretch of fencing that's decorated with crosses. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero tells us how this part of the wall became iconic.
Activists placed hundreds of wooden crosses on the Mexican side near the Tijuana airport in the late 90s, after the Vietnam-era helicopter landing mats went up at the border.
And the message was to deliver the premise that these were human lives that were being lost at the cost of failed border policies.
Pedro Rios of the American Fence Service Committee says each cross was meant to commemorate a person who died entering the U.S. illegally after the fencing rerouted illegal immigration into remote, dangerous areas where hundreds of people have died each year since.
It's strange because you see the large, heavy machinery just yanking the primary border fence from the ground, and with it the crosses that are on it. So there's absolutely no regard for the symbolism, the meaning, what they represented as they're being torn.
The replacement project starts near the Pacific Ocean and extends 14 miles eastward. It's the third of 2 border wall projects the Trump administration has already initiated. The 8 to 10-foot landing mats are being replaced with 18 to 30-foot steel poles with an anti-climbing plate on top. San Diego's Border Patrol Chief Rodney S. Scott says it's going to reduce flows of illegal immigration.
In urban areas where you have big population centers butted up against each other, you don't get any warning about Border Patrol doesn't get any warning about who's crossing that fence. We have to have a lot of personnel ready to deploy in seconds before people can disappear to the shopping centers or get into the trolleys.
He says that's why the Trump administration is focusing on replacing fencing rather than building more where it doesn't exist. Also, the administration still doesn't have funding to build a wall based on prototypes that went up last fall. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
State lawmakers are considering a bill that would help communities get severely sick homeless people off the streets and into care. It would create a streamlined process for establishing conservatorships for people living on the streets who can't manage their basic health needs. City and county governments would pay for all services and provide legal counsel and hearings prior to assuming a homeless person's rights.
This isn't one of those situations where you just yank someone off the street, put them into a hospital like we did in the old days, and you forget about them. This is very due process intensive.
If approved, the conservatorship program would begin as a pilot project in San Francisco and Los Angeles counties. California Governor Jerry Brown is looking to fast-track new wildfire protections in the state. He's proposing convening a conference committee on wildfire prevention when lawmakers return to the Capitol after summer break. Both houses are expected to approve the special committee tomorrow. One thing the committee will consider is a bill that would require utility companies to shut down electrical grids when wildfire danger is high.
You know, we know about it in plenty of advanced timeline. We can get the word out to consumers that your power is going to be out from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m., whatever that case may be.
Bills approved in conference committee don't have to go through the committee hearing process, and they advance to floor votes in both houses more quickly. Lawmakers aim to have this and other wildfire prevention bills signed into law before peak wildfire season this fall. Fire officials are urging people to be careful this 4th of July. The National Fire Protection Association says nearly half of the Independence Day fires are caused by fireworks. CAL FIRE says statewide more than 3,000 have been sparked by fireworks since 2013. Officials say it's not only dangerous, but illegal.
If you buy illegal fireworks and set them off and you are caught, you could face fines up of $50,000, go to jail for a year. And if those fireworks cause a fire in the wildland or wherever, you will be prosecuted.
Local officials say San Diego's extra dry conditions are also something to think about before setting off illegal fireworks.
This year, 2018, saw another decline in rainfall. So our fuels throughout San Diego County, they're drought-stricken, they're dead, they're dying, and they're ready to burn.
So if you want to watch sparks fly safely tonight, go to a professional fireworks show. There are many around the county tonight over San Diego and Harbor and at SeaWorld, but also Ocean Beach, Coronado, Escondido, Chula Vista, and many other locations. We have a complete list for you at kpbs.org. For lifeguards, today is the big day.
We commonly refer to it as the Super Bowl of lifeguarding.
Lots of people on the beach today means lots of potential rescues. One thing lifeguards want swimmers to be aware of is rip currents. They say if you get caught in one, don't panic and don't swim against it. Move parallel to the shore and raise your hand to signal a lifeguard.
When you come to the beach, come and meet with us, talk to us, ask us where a good, safe place is to swim. We want you to have a good time. We don't want to have it to rescue. We don't want you to get in trouble. We want you to have a really good time.
City officials are expecting about 300,000 people to celebrate the holiday at the beach today. The city reports more than 100,000 people were at the beach yesterday, where lifeguards made 34 rescues. The 4th of July can be hard on some pets. Loud fireworks can scare them and cause them to run away. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says this year, most stray pets will be picked up by a local nonprofit instead of animal control.
4th of July is here, but most household pets won't be in the mood for fireworks.
It really just freaks them out, and a lot of times their reaction is to want to run away and try to find a safe place to hide.
The San Diego Humane Society recently took over animal services for a large part of the county.
As of July 1st, we took over the city contracts for 6 additional cities. It's Carlsbad, Del Mar, Encinitas, Solana Beach, Santee, and San Diego.
That means if you lose a pet, you'll most likely be coming to a Humane Society-run shelter to pick them up. This one near Old Town used to be operated by the county.
We have hired over 200 new employees. So with these 6 additional cities, we're going from about 30,000 animals per year to over 50,000 animals per year.
And with 4th of July fireworks, the Humane Society is expecting an increase in runaway animals. But there are ways to help keep your pet calm.
Keeping your pets inside during fireworks shows, we would also recommend closing your doors and windows and even playing some soft music or leaving your TV on, and all of those things can help drown out the noise and help your pet feel a little more at ease.
The Humane Society is waiving pickup fees for lost pets this 4th of July. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Whether it's donuts or pizza or potato salad and pie, fatty carb-rich foods can be irresistible for some of us. Now, new research is shedding light on why. KPBS reporter Jade Hindman tells us how some food interacts with our brains.
A recent study says when we eat something that contains a combination of both fat and carbs, the reward centers in our brain go nuts, tell us to eat more, and short-circuit the part of the brain that manages food consumption. It was a great survival mechanism for the first hundreds of thousands of years in human evolution when food was comparatively scarce for everyone. But that's not the case today. And the San Diego County Fair is probably the best example of that. It's an environment rife with processed foods high in fat and carbohydrates.
It's a cinnamon roll covered with frosting, sprinkles, fruity pebbles, and then a unicorn bacon, you know?
Whether all that sounds appetizing or not, for some reason we still crave concoctions like this. Dr. Eduardo Grunwald is an obesity medicine physician and directs the weight management program at UC San Diego. He says we desire the combination of carbs and fat without even thinking about it. We want it on a subconscious level.
So our genetic makeup is, yes, it's wired to always be seeking consumption of food, calories. It's also wired to always be sort of driven to consume high-calorie dense foods. It's just that in nature, that's hard to come by.
Research published in the Cell Metabolism Journal suggests the not-so-natural foods we create that are rich with both fat and carbs, like ice cream, cakes, and pies, overstimulate our brains, acting like a drug for most people and interfering with the part of the brain that says, I'm full. So not only do we crave fatty sweets, we often overeat them.
I got a hamburger, and after eating that greasy hamburger, you know where I'm going next? The Cinnabon place right over here. So if that answers your question.
Here's how that works. Dr. Grunwald says there are two major systems in the brain that regulate our weight and calorie intake. The first is the hypothalamus. It regulates our weight set point, kind of like a thermostat regulates room temperature. It's a primitive part of the brain that keeps us from starving to death when there are periods of food scarcity.
It's all really regulated by the brain, so there's different structures in the brain that regulate our weight through how we eat, which is below our conscious recognition.
Grunwald says the other part of this is called the Limbic system. This is a group of structures in the brain involved with reward-driven behavior, stimulated by the neurotransmitter dopamine. These structures produce the sensation of pleasure, for example, when eating pizza or ice cream. The problem in our environment is that these brain structures are constantly stimulated with the abundance of food that's high in fat and carbs. Dr. Grunwald says it's why so many people struggle with obesity and the health issues that come along with it.
There's a very complex biology underlying many people's problem, and I think to really address it, you do have to address both the behavioral aspect and many times the biological aspect.
So while there's a fix, it's definitely not magic, and the only unicorn is the one drenched with icing and covered with fruity pebbles along the sweet, tasty journey at the San Diego Fair.
Is it a unicorn in the sense that it's delicious, or is it a unicorn in the sense that there's a few calories in it?
No, it's delicious.
The delicious part.
The delicious part, that's right.
Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, embattled EPA Chief Scott Pruitt faces more ethics complaints. That's coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
This is a view of Oceanside today. Many showed up early to escape the heat and spend the 4th with family. The pier was lined up with fishing rods and for some barbecues. As the weather heats up, Julia Wyden has tonight's forecast.
We're all bracing for this excessive heat that's headed in our direction. We have excessive heat watches in effect from Friday morning through Saturday afternoon. Now, this is for all of San Diego County, and what it means is that our real field temperature will be upwards of 110 degrees at times. That's especially the case for folks who are inland, so be mindful of that. You might be thinking, hey, let's go to the beach, let's cool off there, but there's a high surf advisory in effect through Friday, and that means that your waves are going to be around 7 to 8 feet. At times, they'll get as high as 10 to 12 feet, and you'll have some pretty intense rip currents on top of that. So any beachgoers, be mindful of that. Take it carefully and make sure if you're swimming that there's a lifeguard nearby. I think the surfers will really love it, though. Satellite and radar, it is quiet. We have high pressure that's been settled in over our region. That's helping to keep all of our air dry throughout the southwest. Not the greatest thing, however, because it enhances the fire risk, and that's really been the case up through Northern California and into Nevada. For tonight, we'll see temperatures dropping down into the mid-60s, increasing cloud cover in the metro area. Around the region, expect to see partly cloudy to mostly clear skies and temperatures that come down to the 50s and 60s for most of us. For Thursday, that's when the heat really starts to build in. We have high pressure that's going to be off to the north and east, and we'll get this offshore flow to occur. That offshore flow is what suppresses the cooler ocean air from making its way inland. So coastal spots won't be quite as hot as folks, again, a little bit farther inland, but it's still going to be plenty warm for everyone on this map. San Diego County temperatures, San Diego, we've got 80 degrees, Oceanside 81. We'll be at 98 in Ramona and 110 in Borrego Springs. Your extended forecast at the coast will be in the low 80s on Thursday, 90s for Friday and Saturday. Let's head inland. This is where your temperatures are going to be soaring for Friday and the weekend, making it into the triple digits. But again, feeling upwards of 110 at times when you factor in the humidity. The mountain areas will be in the 90s on Friday. And taking you now to the desert spots, temperatures upwards of 110. Back to you, Susan.
San Diego County is providing more resources to the treatment of opioid addiction. It's a growing problem here and around the country. 42,000 people have died from overdoses nationwide. KPBS anchor Ebony Monet talks to a San Diego man who struggled to get a handle on his addiction.
In this video diary, Brian Sharp says it's painful to stir a cup of tea. Moments later, it cuts to him struggling to feed himself cereal.
There were days that it was so miserable and so uncomfortable that I wanted to give up.
You wouldn't know it today, but 5 years ago, Sharp says he was in a dark place.
I was very depressed. I didn't want to live anymore. I literally had just given up on life.
Sharp says his addiction to pain medication started after a severe back injury and a number of surgeries.
As I went through that injury, the depression set in. Then they put me on those medications, and then the anxiety levels start to rise. So then they start, prescribing me anxiety medications.
During this time, Sharp says his relationship with his family suffered, including with his now 14-year-old son.
He was at an age where he saw the pain and the misery and stuff that I went through, and I think it was harder on him than it was on me.
Today, he's an executive at Pacific Bay Recovery. This is the rehabilitation center headed by Dr. Michael Duffy.
So we have the psychologist rooms, our offices all back there.
Who Sharp credits for his recovery.
It was a tough road. It was Pacific Bay, I would say Dr. Duffy, that saved my life 5.5 years ago. I came into his office drug seeking and was really needing medications. I didn't have a pain doctor because the one that I was seeing lost his license for overprescribing. And so as I went into Dr. Duffy's office, I was, there for one thing and one thing only, and that was for my medication. And he came in and shut that down right away. Just a lot of PT and physical exercise, stretching is a huge component.
As vice president of admissions, Sharp is often the first person to make contact with new patients.
They are in a very vulnerable state. They're depressed, they're scared, they're sad, they're going through this mixed emotion.
Pacific Bay treats about 300 people a year for substance abuse. About 70% are addicted to opioids.
Recovery advocates such as Brian want to see more resources put towards this deadly opioid problem.
The latest numbers show that nearly 1,900 people in California died last year from opioid overdose. 272 of those deaths were in San Diego County.
When you think about opioids, you need to think about both prescription drug abuse and bad outcomes that results of that, including deaths. And then you have the illicit drug, which is often referred to as heroin.
Alfredo Aguirre is the director of Behavioral Health Services. He's responsible for the county's substance abuse treatment programs and says when people lose access to prescription pain meds, some turn to heroin.
When you take all of that, because they're all under the broad category of opioids, it is a crisis.
The county treated more than 11,000 people for substance abuse last year. The current wait time for residential treatment is about 2 weeks. Aguirre says access will improve with the county's implementation of its new Drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system, tripling its budget for such treatment.
Right now, we have somewhere between 40 and 45% people who complete their treatment, but we got to be better than that. We got to be able to show that they're actually achieving good outcomes in terms of their life, in terms of staying sober over the long haul.
It's a very difficult thing to do.
As for Sharp, he says he's 5.5 years addiction-free. He's now married to the woman who helped document his recovery and he's rebuilding his relationship with his son.
That guilt and remorse that we have of the things that, the choices we've made when we are in our addiction and the things that we've done to people is really hard to deal with sometimes.
Sharp describes this period as a second chance, something he wants to share with others.
That's what we're here to do. We're supposed to love one another and help and, do our part to take care of the people that are struggling around us.
Ebony Monet, KPBS News.
For a few weeks each spring, the beaches of Delaware Bay turn into one of the world's hot spots for shorebirds. But it's not just an exciting place for birders. AP reporter Kathy Young says a team of hospital researchers get pretty amped up about it, too.
It's a pit stop like no other. Hundreds of thousands of shorebirds descend on the Delaware Bay every spring to feast on the eggs of these horseshoe crabs, many of the birds migrating from South America to the Arctic.
You train your eye. You're looking for something very specific.
The heavy concentration of different birds makes it one of the world's hotspots for bird flu, and the ideal place for scientists to seek clues to how flu viruses evolve so they just might better protect people. Flu pioneer Robert Webster has long studied links between human and bird flu viruses.
It's important because eventually we would like to be able to predict which would be the next pandemic of influenza.
Researchers from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital are tracking birds at Delaware Bay in hopes of doing just that. Nowhere else in the world have scientists found so many shorebirds swapping flu strains as during this once-a-year stopover.
We have this essentially soup of different flu viruses, and what happens when you get a family of flu viruses together, they sort of start mixing and matching genetic elements.
Flu viruses constantly change and mutate. For example, if a strain carried by a bird or pig mixes with a typically human strain, the genes can shuffle to produce a totally new virus. Most bird flus, including those common to migrating shorebirds, aren't a big threat to people. But experts like Adolfo Garcia Sastre, who is not part of the Delaware Bay Project, say it's important to understand how flu changes in nature.
Now, these viruses in general stay in these migratory birds, but from time to time, some of these strains may jump into a different host, could be poultry, and from there it could jump also into another host, could be swine, or could be ultimately humans.
At the shore, the team scoops up potentially flu-infected bird droppings in a tube and place them on ice. The samples are brought back to the lab and isolated into chicken eggs. More than 600 samples will be tested for new strains of bird flu or signs that older ones are evolving.
And by doing this type of research, characterizing the viruses that are there, that's our end goal, is to be able to say, uh-oh, here's something we've got to worry about.
That was a good one.
The work at the Bay offers a small glimpse into similar but little-known efforts around the globe to better prepare for the next superflu. Kathy Young, Associated Press.
There's lots of celebrating around the county today and big crowds at the beaches. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh joins us from Ocean Beach. Hi, Steve.
Well, that's right, Susan. So the fireworks here are still several hours away, but clearly we're not the only ones here. Ocean Beach is one of the iconic communities here in San Diego. You've got a band going on there, juggling, and come on this way, Nick. So to talk a little bit about this, we've got a couple of folks from the Ocean Beach Main Street Association. We've got Tony George and his wife, Gina. Hi, guys.
Hi. How are you?
All right, so this is not the largest fireworks in San Diego. That's the Big Boom, which is like across Point Loma. So why would people come here?
Because this is the best fireworks in San Diego. San Diego is a small, Ocean Beach is a small town, a republic of surfers and bikers, and everybody from San Diego comes together for our fireworks show. You see the reflection of the water with the beautiful colored fireworks, and we have a wall that comes down from the pier where 100 surfers paddle out underneath it. And everybody comes from all over. We get along here. We have live music, and it's just a great place to be in Ocean Beach today.
Yeah, that's one of the real traditions here. The other tradition was we had Marshmallow Wars here a couple years ago. What happened with that?
Marshmallow Wars was the greatest thing ever. It started on Brighton Avenue. Generations of my family, we love it. It's like a kid. What happened, there used to be a fire on Brighton Street. At the end of the fire, one side would throw marshmallows against the other side. It turned into all over Ocean Beach. And then kind of the touristos took it another level, and it ended up everywhere, and then people started getting out of control.
All right, so back in 2013, that was kind of the last of it, and then they officially banned it in 2014. But the surfers are still here, and all of the music is still here on Ocean Beach. And tomorrow, if you want to help clean up after whatever happens here, from 9 to 12, the Surfrider Foundation is going to be sponsoring a Morning After the Mess where you can come up and clean up at this beach and several others along the ocean front. Reporting from Ocean Beach, Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Looks like a great time, Steve. Thank you. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And if you're still looking for a fireworks show tonight, we leave you with a list of events around the county. Thank you for joining us on this 4th of July. Have a great night.